r/confession. I accidentally found out my employer was closing his business, so I waited out on purpose to get a redundancy. Long story, bear with me. I worked 10 years in my previous job as an e-commerce and store manager. I loved my job. I loved my staff. I loved the clients. I did not love my boss. He was the most unprofessional and mean person I ever met. He was rude and ignorant to everybody and always thought he was right no matter what evidence anybody had to support the other. I have posted enough about him in previous threads, but I hated him. After years of his emotional bullying and gaslighting, I was broken down. I went into a depression, utterly lost and feeling worthless. I started applying for better jobs. So did my staff. They were open with me. We knew he was the problem. One day one of my staff called me out of the blue. Did I know anything about a redundancy? I hadn't a clue what they were talking about. You see, we had a shop iPod attached to our speaker system. However, it was synced with my employer's personal iPhone. Any calls, any WhatsApps and any texts went through his iPod as well. A mild inconvenience to us if we were using Spotify, but whatever. A text notification popped up that was from my employer's accountant. The message read, "I'm not too sure in regards to the statutory redundancy," with the rest of the text cut off that my staff saw as they were changing the music on the iPod. My employer had folded a concession in a department store the year previous. Perhaps he was following up with that. I really hadn't a clue, but this seemed plausible. It would be typical of him to leave important redundancy issues this late, as he was an asshat. My staff were appeased, panic over. Nothing to do with us, right? Except now I was curious. I knew I couldn't look into previous texts on the iPod unless the messages had already been read by my employer. I waited until I was catching up alone one evening a few days later, and went to the iPod. There was a thread of messages from my employer to his accountant about putting the business into liquidation. I was shocked. I felt sick reading somebody else's messages, but I could not know. Was he talking about the previous location? There was no other details attached other than looking into redundancy and claiming liquidation. It didn't specify any staff or store location or time periods. I didn't share this information with my staff. But then I started looking into my employer's behaviour. He was skittish, stopped showing up to work and was acting more odd than usual. I held out. I turned down the job and cut out a holiday I had planned to take. Sure enough, 3 weeks later, I got an email about a staff meeting in regards to financial readjustment of the company. I knew the final bell had tolled. I still won my Oscar for my incredible performance of hearing this news for the first time. I got my redundancy, 4 months late. A healthy sum and a welcome one because I'm saving for a house. Of course, he fought me on the amount and tried to shortchange me almost €2,000. But when I told his accountant I was going to bring him to the claims court, all of a sudden my calculations were correct. So, yeah, that's my little confession. And I'm not sorry. Fuck you, employer. You're a prick, and what goes around, comes around. Edit. For all US readers, severance is the same idea as redundancy. Redundancy is an instance where your job is no longer available, or the business closes. You get paid either by your employer or through a subsidized government redundancy scheme. The latter has a few qualifying factors.